All right, hello and welcome everyone. So today we are going to be talking about my impressions on the revision mainline that just released yesterday. But before we start, I want to say thank you to everyone who showed up to the 10-hour stream that we did. There were like 1,200 of you guys there, and I really appreciate it. So yeah, with that, let's move on in to the kind of things that we didn't really know going in that I now have further information on with the update. First and foremost, let's talk about Arcane stuff, as this is probably the most interesting and probably the most asked about thing in general with the update. Clarifying a few things first. First and foremost, Energize. Energize has a 15-second cooldown, but it provides more energy. So whenever this goes off, you now get 150 energy, but you have the 15-second cooldown. But it has a higher chance to proc of 60%. That 15-second cooldown, I think, is actually totally manageable, and Energize is still going to be really, really excellent, but it's not going to proc like 100,000 times in a row because it'll have that small cooldown. Still very good for keeping your Warframes topped off. I was having no issues with it where I was like, Energize, please activate, and in fact, in some cases, I feel like Energize may actually be stronger now just because its chance to activate has gone up rather significantly. So that's very good in my opinion. And of note here is Aegis. I was completely wrong about what this did because the wording on this Arcane is not really correct. This does not provide shield recharge, which is a stat in Warframe. This instead is Grace, but at a incredibly high percentage. This tops out at 300, or not 300, sorry, that's what it feels like. It tops out at 30%. Of your total shield restored per second for 12 seconds. So this is a staple if you care about shields in any way, shape, or form. I have this equipped on Mag right now, and of course this is on Hildren if you're going to be using Hildren. This gives an immense amount of shield regeneration as it stands currently and is a very, very good Arcane. I really hope that they change the wording on it though, as it is incredibly misleading because shield recharge is its own thing. What this mod should actually read at max rank is that it is a 6% chance for 12 seconds of like 30% shield regeneration per second, or something along those lines, just to really clarify what it's actually doing, just because shield recharge is its own stat, especially the way it's capitalized in-game. Like, shield and recharge are both capitalized, so you'd think it would be that stat in particular, but it's just not that. It's very strange. So, I was wrong about Aegis. Happy to be wrong, honestly, because it means that that Arcane is really good instead of total dog shit. So, there's that. That's fantastic. And along with that, Tanker was nerfed from the notes that we got that said it was going to be at 1,800 armor down to 1,200 armor. But I'm not fully convinced this wasn't done in error because on those notes, and there's no update to those notes, it said it was going to be at 1,800 armor, which is what we all expected to get. And instead, it's at the values that Ultimatum is at. So I feel like there may have been something where somebody just copy-pasted the Ultimatum values or something along those lines that happened to this, and maybe that they'll fix it in a hotfix, but right now it's at 1,200 armor, which is a significant and unfortunate nerf to Tanker that Rhino does not appreciate as the only Warframe that was using Tanker. Otherwise, though, I have used a bunch of Arcanes, and I have compiled a small list of just generally solid ones that you guys might want to shoot for. Nullifier, really good. This is mostly for farming more Arcanes, because this, whenever it's maxed out, makes you completely immune to magnetic procs, which is really, really useful in the Terrorist fights, because then you can just ignore all the magnetic procs and keep your energy and keep using your abilities, so super good there. Also, probably will be relevant in the future. Magnetic procs are a heavy penalty that DE likes to throw at us, and this is a good solution to them. Grace, still excellent, even though it can't refresh itself. The higher numbers on it are still fine, and my Inaros, while feeling slightly more vulnerable, still regenerates a shit zillion health and is absolutely and totally fine with Grace being changed the way it was. Avenger, still incredible. You can do big nuke war memes with this still, and many other things, and it's just a solid crit boost if you're a Warframe that's going to be getting shot a lot, such as Chroma or Warframes that get shot a lot that aren't Rhino, who can unfortunately not proc this Arcane. Strike, very good. Melee Arcane. Velocity, extremely powerful. Velocity mainly used on Mesa, because Mesa's 4 can benefit from Velocity. It is an absolutely insane buff to get 120% fire rate for Mesa's Peacemakers. She is a fucking anti-air cannon. It is absurd. And then beyond that, we have Victory. Victory, if you're looking for a good supplement to go with Grace, if you feel like you're not tanky enough for whatever reason, Victory is very powerful and can be triggered off of melee headshot kills, and this is going to give you a really strong regeneration as well. So if you're playing a Naros and you're looking for that second slot to put in, and you just want to be harder to kill, Victory is a good option there. Also, a great option for any Warframe now is Consequence. I've made a video on Consequence in the past on why Consequence is a good Arcane, but now that we can't double stack Arcanes, like we're not doing double Tanker on Rhino, and we're not doing double Grace on Inaros, a lot of Warframes have a second slot that they don't much care about because they're just using a stronger Arcane that they care about in one slot, and their second slot is kind of a freebie. Consequence is a wonderful, wonderful Arcane to put in that slot because it makes you so goddamn fast, like so incredibly fast. Plus 60% parkour velocity does not seem like a lot, but it is absolutely intense and very worth it. Just try and get a hold of it if you can. They're not expensive. They're super common. Tanker, as we went over. Then there's Acceleration. Acceleration, really good fire rate for primary weapons. This is going to be excellent with like your Kuba Comb, which is solid right now, and many other primary weapons like sniper rifles. You're going to be fast firing the Rubico, things like that. And then Momentum, Precision, and Fury, all just more damage Arcanes, just things you could consider popping in. Fury, especially for melee weapons, if you want to like combine Strike and Fury together, that's totally the thing. Lots of good Arcanes to go around, and I think DE definitely completely succeeded in making it so that we have a larger build variety. And also, in general, outside of Guardian, which I still feel like is a very unnecessary percentage chance to activate nerf on that one, I feel like they really succeeded in just like giving us build variety and like a reason to care about what other kind of generic Arcanes are there, like Consequence, which is nice because like a lot of these Arcanes are an effect that I want, but I was never doing it because I was double stacking, so I think they really succeeded there. Moving on, let's talk about Magus Arcanes and a like small note on the operator stuff. Basically, the long and the short of the Magus Arcane stuff is that Elevate and Lockdown are fucking sick. Fucking sick. Maxed out Elevate right now, great. 95% chance to restore 300 health whenever you transfer out of your Warframe. Fucking spam 5 full heal whenever you want on the button. Like, really, really effective. You're basically no longer gambling at all, because 95% chance is so consistent, much more consistent than the 75% chance we had previously, so that's incredible. And Lockdown, being able to hit more enemies and in a larger area, just makes this Arcane easier to use, and it was already fantastic for a number of different situations, the least of which is definitely not Disruption locking down those enemy targets. The one thing that's unfortunate on Operators is we did Eidolon runs, and the knockback on the amps that had self-damage previously on the Operator is really annoying. And making the Eidolon fights more annoying was definitely not what I wanted. And it just ended up basically just using the primary fire on the amp because the blowback is so annoying on the alternate fire. Also, it seemed to do considerably less damage, and that's probably a function of the AoEs being nerfed, but we'll get to that in a moment. Hopefully, at some point, DE looks at the balance of like shield phase on Eidolons and tweaks it so that shield phase isn't as annoying as it is now, but that'll be a different time. Okay, widely, let's talk about explosive weapons. First and foremost, I think that the knockback is very manageable, but there's a recovery window kind of issue with it. So the thing you're supposed to be able to do whenever you get blown back by these different weapons is that you're going to flash, and whenever that flash happens, if you jump out of the rollback, and then you're in the air and getting away and getting out of the situation. And that's great and all, but that window seems to be, at current, really buggy and not really synced up with the animation. So, like, you'll flash, but you need to press the button, like, 10 frames prior to the flash happening to actually be able to jump out of it. And also, those windows, even the ones that are misplaced, are very short based on the amount of time I spent testing it. So I think that there's some cleanup essentially that needs to happen on the like recovery window and the blowback and the knockback stuff in general, but I think it is a good solution to the self-damage and stuff. Also, very important, not actually very important, but I would really love it if anyone at DE is watching this. In Captura, you don't get blown away by explosives, but I'd really love to have that animation available for making YouTube thumbnails. So if we could be blown away in Capturas, that'd be sick. That's incredibly minor problem that only I have probably, but that is a thing because you're invincible in Captura. You can't be blown back there. So it's a negative in terms of fashion overall, I think. So there's that. Otherwise, there are kind of significant nerfs for explosive weapons, but as you can see on the list here, I have crossed this out as this was literally just changed as I was making this video. This stuff is going to need more testing because they just changed, like the Exceltra, the Chakur, a bunch of weapons got changed except for the Brahma and one other weapon, but I forget which one it was in the patch notes. But the Brahma is still a 90% fall off. A bunch of the other weapons just got changed to be much more reasonable in their fall off damage. I believe the Chakur got nerfed to like 30% fall off, which is totally fine for that weapon because the AoE is very small, and that stuff is all good. So that stuff changed. We're gonna have to mess with more explosive weapons and things and see if like the Exceltra can make a recovery because it was extremely poor with the 90% fall off. But as you can see on here, I have that the Brahma is still good but weakened. I've been using the Brahma pretty extensively. It's super fun. And the 90% fall off on that seems fine for the most part. It can be really annoying in some specific situations that I know that the Brahma would have killed before, but overall I think it's a positive change. I reacted pretty poorly to it initially though, I will say, so don't be surprised if it's going to take you some getting used to as well, because it's kind of unfortunate where it's like that enemy was on the edge of this explosion and previously you know they would die, but now they survive with like 20% health or whatever. So that can be annoying to get used to, but it's totally fine in the end. Moving on, status changes. So the status changes, there's a lot here, and the most important thing that no one talked about prior to this update is that the IPS weighting has changed. And what I mean by that is IPS stands for Impact, Puncture, Slash. Those are our main damage types, our physical damage types, and those previously in the what status am I going to roll when I go for a status proc, those were changed from a 4 times multiplier on how likely they were to no longer having any multiplier on their likelihood whatsoever. And this is a very large change because it means every single weapon across the whole game is now much more likely to proc an elemental than they were previously. Because before, if we had, let's say a weapon had 100 slash damage and 100 corrosive damage. Previously, if you wanted to calculate whenever you would get a status chance, which one of those statuses it would pick, you would multiply the slash damage by 4 and then just do a proper ratio. You would just give it 4 out of 5 chance to proc because it was being multiplied by 4 for the purposes of choosing your status. So you'd be very, very likely to proc slash in that situation because it would proc 80% of the time, and you'd only be getting your elemental 20% of the time. Now, they are a raw 50-50. You're going to get 50% slash, 50% corrosive if it's 100 and 100, if they're even numbers. So it's a really, really interesting change because I think it is going to make heat way, way more desirable as a damage type, because heat, being somewhat similar to slash in its effectiveness, is going to be able to pair up with slash, and doing both is going to be really, really strong. Along with that, viral is very, very strong, and it's stronger than we even thought it was going to be because it's going to proc so much more often than it would have previously. So that stuff is really interesting that they changed those IPS weights. Really cool. Now then, just to talk about each status a little bit, there is I've kind of like arranged these into a hierarchy of how good they are. We have Impact and Gas. DE has already stated that these are both going to be looked at and changed, so we don't know what's going to happen with them yet. At current, neither of them are very strong. That is, of course, why they are going to be looking at them. Outside of that, though, Cold, Puncture, Electric, and Radiation are all poor, in my opinion. Cold being just as slow and not having any damage stuff to go with it. Just not useful, plain and simple. Puncture reduces the incoming damage from enemies that you proc Puncture on. That's just not useful, and it's just bad. Electric is not quite like what you want. Like, it does a little bit, like there's some stunning and stuff in there, and it's like mediocre at best, but it's just really not doing enough. It's definitely not going to be able to justify itself as a status that is by itself. And Radiation, while it is still has the bonuses of like having a 75% pierce and effectiveness against alloy armor, which is great, and it's going to be used in those situations where we need that, such as Eidolon hunting. The actual effect that was added to Radiation on double procking is absolutely fucking useless. You proc the enemy, and then whenever they get shot by an ally, they take more damage from their allies, or their previous allies, I suppose. But what this does is essentially mean that the extra effect on Radiation does fucking nothing for you, because as the Warframe, we're trying to kill the enemies. Having the enemies kill each other has never been effective, and even if they do 550% more damage to each other, that's just not actually going to be very helpful, and it's certainly not going to speed up the rate at which you're killing them, unless, of course, you actually get to the 550% damage they deal to each other before you've killed the enemy, which is very, very unlikely if your build is any kind of good. I would really love to see Radiation in particular changed to an effect that kind of synergizes with its initial effect, which is whenever you Radiation an enemy, they can then target their previous allies. I think that we should get this damage bonus at a lower rate. 550% would be way too high for what I'm about to suggest. Just to note, I think we should get a damage bonus if they are not targeting us for attacks and they are under the effects of Radiation. Because if they're not shooting us, they're distracted, and, you know, reasonably, they should take more damage. Like, I think that's pretty fair and kind of fits into what Radiation is as it stands now. So that'd be nice to see, and I think it would bring Radiation, at the very least, more in line with Viral, Magnetic, and Corrosive, where those are right now. Speaking of Magnetic and Corrosive, both seem decent. Corrosive is definitely not the golden child that it once was, where you want to have it just constantly and forever, but it's still solid to have as like a kind of secondary elemental, I find, at current. And Magnetic, while I don't think it is like extremely useful right now, I feel like it is in a good spot and will come up more probably as we get more of this Corpus content developed, that we know we're going to be getting with like Corpus, Kuva Liches, and the new tile set, and probably new enemies that are going to be coming with that. Magnetic may be able to find a home there. Right now, it just seems like it's pretty okay, which is, you know, way better than it was before. And then at kind of the top end, we have Viral, Heat, Slash, and Toxin. As far as I can tell right now, those are hardcore, the meta. Those are what you want to be proccing. Viral is very, very strong. Heat is exactly as it was before, so shocker, very, very strong. Slash is as good as it was before, except because of the IPS weight changes, you're not going to proc it as much as you would before. This is especially notable on melee weapons like the Reaper Prime, which were somewhat nerfed by this because they're going to be proccing their elementals so much more often. So your IPS weighting is not nearly as important for your actual melee weapon, and the elementals matter more. And then Toxin is just solid. It completely goes through shields, which is going to be a benefit because Slash no longer has that benefit. And also it just stacks damage pretty effectively, like Heat and Slash and Viral. Basically, the 4 elementals that do a lot of fucking damage are real good, but the other ones that don't have as direct a damage output increase are worse, and the ones that don't have a damage output increase for us are not very great at all. Shocker, I know. Our damage types need to be able to help us kill enemies. I know it's weird, but that's really just the way it is. But to kind of go with all of that stuff, the kind of enemy toughness rebalance where they've changed a lot of the health and the armor and like the shields and like having shield gates on enemies and such. That stuff, overall, my feeling on it, having played a bunch of like the new update, is that I like it overall. Armor not being as much of a factor anymore, and not being a thing that you must plan for in literally all cases, is really kind of opening up the game to more potential builds and like just more things that we can do in general. I think it's really, really solid. Also of note that is not on these notes and very related to this, the toughness that has been granted to Warframes that were more shield-centric before, such as Mag, very notably, but also Hildren and Volt and such. Those Warframes are way, way better now, and it feels way more like they require skill to play, and like they're in danger, but they're not like fragile in a lot of ways. Like previously, if you just ran into a group of level 170 enemies, let's say, with Nova, there was a pretty reasonable likelihood that you could die, because you could die in one shot. With shield gating, that simply doesn't happen anymore. You can't die in one shot, so you essentially doubled your EHP in those high-level situations, which really helps a lot. And Warframes like Mag, because they can generate a ton of shields with, say, Mag's 4, she's going to be able to get out of things way more often than other Warframes. And also, on the note of Mag, her 2 is really weird now. Hopefully they revert whatever they did to her 2, besides the visuals, which look great, because her 2 is acting weird with how it's like not trapping enemies very well. But besides that, like, her survivability is considerably improved, and it's really, really nice to see that maybe the shield gate, more so than anything else, can kind of push us a little ways out of like the heavy tanking meta we have been in for a long, long while so far. But yeah, I think that the changes on the whole, extremely good. There's a couple parts in here where it's like, that's like, there's a few iffy things, but of course there are. With such a like massive list of changes, of course some stuff wasn't going to be perfect. And like they said with the explosive weapons, they started low so that they could buff, which is literally what they did right before I started recording this video. So it's good to see that they're acting fast on that and trying to fix things as this stuff comes up. But yeah, overall, extremely happy with the update. It's really good, and I've just been enjoying playing content that's not Railjack. Hopefully they can fix Railjack next. But yeah, this has been kind of just my impressions on the mainline so far. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Figured this would be a good follow-up to yesterday's video, and I will see you tomorrow. Also, a quick sidebar for those of you that stayed to the end of the video. 1, thank you. 2, I've kind of had just B-roll going here of me just doing some random tests and things along with my notes and talking about this. Let me know what you think about that. Good thing, bad thing, don't want it there, adds to the video. I'm not quite sure. Feedback on that would be much appreciated. Thank you.